Carl Jung's final warning to empaths was not just unsettling, it was terrifying. He believed that many of you are unknowingly being drained, your inner light consumed, while you mistake the process for love, connection, or even healing. Imagine this. You walk into a room shining brightly with compassion, yet by the time you leave, you feel hollow, as if someone quietly siphoned away your soul. Jung documented this chilling phenomenon in his private notes, a discovery so disturbing that he hesitated to publish it. What he found was that empaths, those with rare and extraordinary emotional sensitivity, were being systematically fed upon by what can only be called unconscious energy parasites. But these weren't the villains you'd expect. They didn't look dangerous, nor did they always intend harm. They appeared as broken, charming, vulnerable souls, people who seemed to desperately crave your understanding and your care. Yet Jung noticed something far darker hidden beneath. These individuals had unconsciously learned a survival mechanism. They sustained themselves by drawing life force from others, especially from empaths whose spiritual light burned the brightest. And here lies the most terrifying truth. This feeding is invisible. It happens silently under the guise of intimacy, through emotional manipulation disguised as connection, through trauma bonds misinterpreted as profound love, through the empath's own compassionate heart weaponized against them. Jung realized this was no accident. Empaths weren't just unlucky in their relationships, they were being actively hunted, targeted by those whose own inner flame had died, who could only survive by consuming the light of another. So today, we step into Jung's shadow realm of human psychology. Together, we'll expose these unseen predators, uncover their hidden feeding patterns before they strike, and reveal Jung's forbidden method for transforming yourself from prey into sovereign, without extinguishing the very gift that makes you extraordinary. Because here's the revelation modern psychology still struggles to acknowledge. Empaths are not born broken. They are forged, shaped in the crucible of childhood trauma, into perfect hosts for emotional parasites. Jung once wrote, "The meeting of two personalities is like the contact of two chemical substances. If there is any reaction, both are transformed." But what happens when one personality doesn't seek transformation, only consumption? We saw how empaths unknowingly become targets for invisible predators. But Jung's clinical work revealed something even darker, something far more unsettling. When an empath encounters an energy parasite, only one person undergoes transformation. And tragically, it is never the parasite. Think about it from an evolutionary lens. Why do empaths carry this almost supernatural sensitivity? It wasn't random, it was survival. Imagine a child growing up in chaos. Every slammed door, every flicker of anger in a parent's eyes, every unspoken tension in the air. That child who could read micro-expressions, anticipate sudden mood shifts, and absorb unspoken emotions was the child who survived. Hyper-attunement became their shield in a world that offered no safety. But here's the cruel irony. The very gift that once protected you as a child, now as an adult, makes you a beacon for predators, people who have learned, consciously or not, how to weaponize that sensitivity against you. Dr. Judith Olaf's research confirmed what Jung had already seen decades earlier. Empaths' mirror neurons fire with unusual intensity. Your brain doesn't just notice another person's feelings, it literally absorbs them, as if they were your own heartbeat, your own sorrow, your own joy. And here is the hidden danger. Jung understood, though many modern therapists overlook it, that some individuals have learned to exploit this neurological difference. They don't simply stumble into your empathy by chance, they strategically provoke it. They unconsciously master the art of emotional manipulation, disguising it as intimacy, cloaking it as connection. This is how trauma bonding masquerades as deep, once-in-a-lifetime love. How energy extraction hides beneath the illusion of intimacy. Have you ever walked away from someone you cared for deeply, only to feel inexplicably hollow, drained, as if your very spirit was leaking out of you? If so, you already know this truth. Write it in the comments. They were feeding on my light. But the most devastating discovery Jung made was something he called the shadow projection reversal. The parasite doesn't merely take your light. They convince you that surrendering it is your destiny, your purpose. Again and again in his practice, Jung witnessed this pattern. He wrote, "Everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves. But in the case of empaths and energy parasites, the dynamic is reversed. In this reversal, the parasite projects their own emptiness onto the empath. They whisper, sometimes with words, sometimes through subtle actions, that your exhaustion equals love, that your depletion proves devotion, that your drained body is evidence of true intimacy. And yet, your body has always been trying to warn you. Think about the last time you left someone's presence completely depleted. Did you notice the sudden fatigue, the emotional overwhelm, the tightness in your chest, the fogginess in your mind? Those were not random symptoms. They were signals. Your body was screaming the truth you were being fed upon. And yet, how often have you silenced those warnings? Instead of trusting your body's signals, you likely told yourself, "I'm just being too sensitive. Maybe I'm overthinking this." But this is exactly what the energy parasite needs you to believe. Jung described it as a form of unconscious gaslighting, when another person's shadow convinces your conscious mind that your intuition is the enemy, that your inner knowing is flawed. So how does the feeding process really unfold? This is where Jung's observations become chilling in their precision. He mapped out the stages almost like a ritual, each step drawing the empath deeper into the web. Stage 1, the light recognition. Energy parasites are irresistibly drawn to empaths like moths to flame. Across a crowded room, they can sense your openness, your emotional availability, the way your spirit glows with generosity. Jung noted that narcissistic personalities, in particular, have an uncanny radar for spotting empaths immediately. They recognize the energy signature of someone who gives more than they take, someone who feels more deeply than most, someone who willingly shoulders emotional responsibility for others. Stage 2, the wound display. The parasite doesn't begin with demands. They begin with pain. They present their wounds like offerings. They share stories of trauma, heartache, loss, and struggle. They appear vulnerable, raw, authentic. They mirror your depth while secretly concealing their emptiness. And here lies the trap. Your gift of compassion gets activated. You lean closer. You listen harder. You believe you are witnessing someone's true soul. Jung once wrote, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." But energy parasites twist that privilege into performance. They have mastered the art of becoming not who they are, but who you need them to be. Stage 3, the empathy activation. Once they have hooked your compassion, the extraction begins. It is not sudden, but systematic. Crisis after crisis appears, each one demanding your emotional labor. They trauma dump without ever giving back. They confide in you endlessly, making you feel special, chosen, the one person who truly gets them when no one else could. And this is where Jung noticed a heartbreaking pattern. Empaths so often mistake being needed for being loved. Stage 4, the depletion normalization. This is the most insidious stage of all. Slowly, the parasite convinces you that exhaustion is not a red flag, but a testament to the depth of your bond, that your fatigue is proof of love, that your constant emotional overwhelm is not exploitation, but evidence that you are simply a highly sensitive person. And as you accept this, your light grows dimmer day by day without you even realizing it. But here's where Jung's understanding becomes revolutionary. He didn't reduce this to mere interpersonal dysfunction or toxic relationships. No, he recognized it as something far greater, an archetypal pattern, what I call the wounded healer meeting the shadow devourer. Jung once wrote, "The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely." For empaths, this truth cuts especially deep. To accept yourself fully means recognizing that your compassion, the very gift that defines you, can also be turned into a weapon. It means admitting that what makes you radiant can also become your prison, that your light, if unguarded, can be consumed. In Jungian psychology, every archetype carries a shadow, and the shadow of the empath is not cruelty nor indifference. It is something far subtler, the unconscious need to be needed, that hidden addiction to fixing others because offering help feels safer than being truly seen. Underneath it all lies a terror of abandonment, so profound that you may choose emotional vampirism over the loneliness of silence. And here's the painful truth. Energy parasites are not villains scheming in the dark. They are not consciously plotting your destruction. No, they are unconscious beings, driven by what Jung called the shadow's hunger for wholeness. They are drawn to you because they sense in you what they have exiled in themselves, the capacity for real feeling, authentic connection, and emotional depth. But instead of turning inward and reclaiming these lost qualities, they've found a shortcut. They steal them. They feed on your emotional energy because they are severed from their own source. They bask in your warmth because their inner flame has long gone out. This creates what can only be described as the psychological vampire effect. The more energy you pour into them, the more they require. The harder you try to heal them, the more broken they appear. The more light you share, the darker their shadow becomes. And this is not because they are inherently evil, it is because they are psychologically incomplete. They have disowned their capacity for genuine emotion. Without an inner well to drink from, they must constantly consume from outside sources. It is like a body without a digestive system. No matter how much food enters, it never leads to nourishment. Hunger never ends. And so you, the empath, face what I call the impossible choice. You can feel their emptiness as if it were your own. You sense their pain, their hunger, their desperate need for the very light you carry. Your compassionate nature urges you to heal them, to save them, to lift them from the darkness. But here is Jung's radical discovery, the truth that turns the pattern upside down. You cannot heal another by letting them feed on your essence. You cannot love someone back to wholeness by allowing them to drain your light. And you cannot rescue someone who is unconsciously committed to staying lost. So what does this pattern look like in everyday life? Let's step into the first and perhaps most devastating example, the romantic energy vampire. Emily thought she had found her soulmate when she met Robert at a spiritual retreat. Robert seemed like everything Emily had ever longed for, deep, sensitive, wounded in a way that awakened her healing nature. He spoke of his childhood traumas, his struggles with depression, his desperate search for meaning. And Emily, with her empathic heart, felt chosen. She felt special, convinced she was the one person who could truly understand him when no one else could. But within just a few months, Emily began to notice a disturbing pattern. She was always exhausted. After every long conversation, she felt drained, never renewed. Robert began calling during her work hours with one emotional crisis after another. He would trauma dump for hours, pouring his pain into her without ever asking about her day. And on the rare occasions Emily tried to share her own struggles, Robert would either dismiss them or twist them until they became about his suffering instead. When Emily turned to Jung's principles, The illusion shattered. She realized Robert was never seeking healing. He was seeking supply. Her empathy had become his drug, her emotional labor, his crutch. The moment Emily began to set boundaries, Robert's mask slipped. Suddenly, the man who once adored her accused her of being cold, distant, not the woman he thought she was. But the truth was simple. Emily had stopped being his emotional feeding source, and when that supply ran dry, Robert's unconscious instinct was to search for a new host. From there, the story shifts to the family energy parasite. James's mother had always been emotionally overwhelming, almost suffocating. She would call him endlessly with one crisis after another, making him feel responsible for her well-being. If he didn't answer right away, she would guilt him, accusing him of abandoning her. And when he finally tried to create space, she went further, threatening suicide to pull him back into orbit. Jung would have instantly recognized this as the devouring mother archetype, the parent who unconsciously feeds on their child's life force rather than nurturing it. James's empathy had been weaponized against him from the very beginning. When James finally learned about the psychology of energy parasitism, something inside him shifted. He realized his exhaustion had nothing to do with being a bad son. It was the inevitable result of being systematically drained by someone who had never learned to regulate her own emotions. Setting boundaries with his mother felt like betrayal, but in truth, it was an act of self-preservation. And this pattern isn't limited to romance or family. It shows up everywhere, even in the workplace. Jennifer worked with a colleague who was perpetually in crisis. This person monopolized team meetings with personal drama, sought Jennifer out for endless one-on-one support sessions, and made their inability to cope into everyone else's emergency. What made it particularly insidious was how they framed it. They cast themselves as the emotional one in a cold, uncaring corporate environment. Their drama wasn't dysfunction, they claimed, it was depth. And Jennifer, like so many empaths, was pulled into the trap. Jennifer's natural empathy made her feel obligated, almost duty-bound, to provide endless emotional labor. She told herself it was kindness, but Jung would have seen something else entirely: projection. Her colleague, unable to regulate their own emotions, unconsciously shifted that burden onto everyone around them, while painting themselves as the innocent victim of a cold, unfeeling world. And this is where Jung's warning becomes urgent. The longer you allow energy parasites to feed on your light, the more their shadow begins to merge with your own. Slowly, almost invisibly, you start to believe their projection, that your very existence is to serve the emotional needs of others. Jung wrote, "One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." For empaths, this truth carries a brutal implication. It means recognizing that your compulsion to heal others so often springs not from pure love, but from unhealed wounds within yourself. The shadow side of empathy whispers that you only matter if you are useful, that love must be earned through endless service, that your worth lies in your capacity to absorb, to process, to carry the suffering of others. And it is precisely this belief system that makes you the perfect host for energy parasites. You give limitless emotional labor, convincing yourself it is love. You drain your own resources, telling yourself it is compassion. You sacrifice your well-being, persuading yourself it is spiritual growth. But Jung's insight shattered this illusion. He revealed something that could transform the way you see yourself forever. Your light was never meant to be consumed by others. It was meant to illuminate your own path toward wholeness. When you constantly give your energy away, you're not practicing love. You're avoiding the terrifying, sacred work of learning to love yourself. And when you fixate on healing others, you are often running from the far more frightening task of healing your own wounds. In this way, The energy parasite becomes your enabler in what Jung would call spiritual bypassing. They provide someone for you to save so that you never have to save yourself. They generate endless drama so you never have to face your own silence. They offer you the mask of martyrdom so you never have to claim your birthright as sovereign. And this is where Jung's framework becomes revolutionary, because he did not simply diagnose the problem, he showed a path forward, a way for empaths to protect their light without hardening their heart. I call it the light method, a framework for protecting your radiance without losing your compassion. Each letter stands for a step, and together, they form a path towards sovereignty. L. Learn to discern energy signatures. Jung emphasized the importance of what he called feeling-toned complexes. Every person you meet carries an energetic signature, and as an empath, your system can read these signatures if you know how to pay attention. Energy parasites feel different than healthy people. With parasites, you often leave the interaction feeling drained, anxious, foggy, or emotionally hijacked, as if your inner compass has been scrambled. With healthy people, the opposite happens. You feel clear, grounded, energized, even inspired. So begin documenting this. Notice how your body feels before, during, and after every interaction. Your body is not betraying you. It is your most sophisticated radar system. If you learn to trust it, it will reveal who nourishes you and who quietly feeds on you. I. Integrate your shadow. Jung believed that shadow integration was essential for psychological health. And for empaths, this means owning the parts of yourself that you often try to deny. The part that craves being needed, the part that fears abandonment, the part that still believes love must be earned through sacrifice. Ask yourself, what do I gain by being needed by broken people? How does rescuing others allow me to avoid my own healing? Which childhood wound am I unconsciously trying to repair through saving others? The goal isn't to eliminate these tendencies, it's to make them conscious, so they no longer secretly drive your choices, leading you again and again into the arms of emotional parasites. G. Guard your sacred energy. Jung once wrote, "Your vision becomes clear when you look into your heart. Who looks outside dreams. Who looks inside awakens." Protecting your energy is not selfish. It is your spiritual responsibility. It means saying no to emotional labor that leaves you hollow. It means refusing to carry the unprocessed shadows of others. It means choosing relationships that replenish you instead of relationships that quietly consume you. Your energy is finite. It is sacred. Every moment you spend processing someone else's shadow is a moment you cannot spend cultivating your own light. H. Honor your authentic nature. Energy parasites are magnetically attracted to empaths who dim their own light just to make others comfortable. The more you deny your gifts, silence your intuition, or minimize your sensitivity, the easier it becomes for others to consume the very essence you suppress. Jung believed in the process of individuation, the path of becoming who you truly are, not who others demand you to be. For empaths, this means embracing your sensitivity as strength, trusting your intuition as wisdom, and using your gifts with intention instead of unconsciously scattering them to those who feed. T. Transform trauma into wisdom. Because your story, your pain, and your past are not weights meant to keep you small. They are raw material. When faced directly, they can become the foundation of your strength. Jung once confessed, "The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely." To embrace yourself fully also means facing the reality that you've been targeted by energy feeders, not because you are fragile, but because you carry a rare radiance that unconscious people crave. Your empathic gift was first shaped as a survival mechanism, but survival is not the same as sovereignty. Now that gift must evolve from an instinctive defense into a deliberate act of choice. You can sense another's sorrow without swallowing it. You can offer compassion without emptying your soul. You can support without sacrificing your own vitality. When Jung's insights are applied to relationships, the entire pattern shifts. The gravitational pull that once invited energy parasites fades. In its place, you begin attracting awakened individuals, those who can meet your depth rather than drain it. Yet, here lies the paradox. When their source of supply is threatened, parasites often intensify their tactics. They may stage larger dramas, weaponize desperation, or accuse you of being cold, selfish, or unrecognizable compared to who they imagine you to be. This is what can be called the last desperate flare of the shadow. When extraction is blocked, the system doesn't dissolve quietly. It resists, manipulates, lashes out before collapsing. Many mistake this storm as proof they've become heartless. In truth, it is confirmation that their boundaries are finally holding. Remember, their escalation is a reflection of their dependency, not a verdict on your worth. You are not required to be the dumping ground for anyone's unresolved emotions. The healthy ones in your life will never punish you for protecting your center. They will honor your need for space, support your healing, and mirror back the balance you give. And ultimately, here is the essential truth. If you desire conscious relationships, you must first embody consciousness yourself. Like attracts like. Unhealed wounds magnetize exploitation, but a self-aware soul resonates only with others walking the same awakened path. The journey is not merely about saying no to those who consume you. It is about transforming into the very kind of presence that draws in the relationships your spirit longs for. If you long for relationships that flow both ways, you must learn the art of receiving as deeply as you give. If you desire genuine love, you cannot wear a mask shaped by others' expectations. You must arrive as your unedited self. Jung reminded us, the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. This isn't a pleasant slogan, it is a call to spiritual battle. Those who live by siphoning your vitality have every reason to keep you small, weary, and blind to your own radiance. The moment you start protecting your energy, you are not simply rewriting relationship patterns, you are stepping into what can only be called the struggle for your soul. And this is no metaphor. Your essence, your very spark, is what's being contested. Energy parasites will deploy every tool to keep their access alive. Guilt. After all I've suffered, you would leave me behind? Shame. I thought you were kinder than this. Fear. If you walk away, you'll end up alone. Urgency. I need you right now more than ever. Identity assaults. This isn't who you really are. But Jung handed us the ultimate shield, awareness. When you can name manipulation as manipulation, its grip evaporates. Every no you speak to emotional predation is simultaneously a yes to your own evolution. Every boundary you uphold is an affirmation that your authentic self has a right to exist. And each time you refuse to dim your flame for someone else's comfort, you are choosing growth over stagnation. This does not make you heartless, it makes you wise. You begin to tell the difference between genuine compassion and self-erasing caretaking. You learn the art of supporting others without wounding yourself in the process. And here lies the revelation that changes everything. When an empath awakens to their true power, they become a threat to unconscious systems. An empath who cannot be drained, coerced, or manipulated destabilizes every relationship built on domination. You become a living mirror, forcing others to confront the very shadows they have spent their lives avoiding. You become the line in the sand that forces others to face their own storms. The awakened empath no longer shines just to preserve themselves. They illuminate the path for others to ignite their own flame. No longer a well to be endlessly drained, you transform into a catalyst for real growth. But this evolution comes with a price, one most empaths fear to pay. You must accept being misunderstood, even resented by those still asleep. You must release connections that only survived because you kept sacrificing your own energy. You must choose solitude over counterfeit intimacy. Jung once wrote, "The meeting of two personalities is like the contact of two chemical substances. If there is any reaction, both are transformed." As an awakened empath, you can only walk alongside those equally committed to their own transformation. The rest will fall away, not as rejection, but as refinement. This is not loss, it is liberation. This is not abandonment, it is sovereignty. Tell me in the comments, have you ever been branded selfish simply for setting boundaries with those who drain you? Your energy is sacred, and soon you'll find you'd rather keep one genuine bond than scatter yourself across dozens of hollow connections. Presence will matter more to you than numbers. You will see that your light is too sacred to be consumed by those unwilling to face their own shadows. Jung described 3 stages of empath development. Knowing where you stand is the map that guides you toward true energetic sovereignty. Stage 1, the unconscious empath. You feel the world pouring through you, but you cannot decipher it. You absorb other people's storms without realizing what is happening. You end up drained, blaming your oversensitivity. You attract emotional predators because your gift is unguarded. At this stage, empathy rules you. You do not yet rule it. It's like being a radio that catches every signal, but has no ability to choose the station. The first medicine here is boundaries, learning to separate what belongs to you from what belongs to others. Stage 2, the conscious empath. You begin to recognize your sensitivity as a skill, not a curse. You can sense emotions without automatically absorbing them. You learn to shield your energy, to stand in your own field without being pulled apart. You begin to manage your boundaries with those who would otherwise consume you. At this stage, you begin to recognize the subtle line between empathy and enmeshment. You can extend compassion without bleeding yourself dry. Yet guilt still lingers when you draw boundaries, and old patterns sometimes lure you back into self-sacrifice. Level 3, the sovereign empath. Here, shadow and gift are woven together into wholeness. Your sensitivity is no longer a burden to endure, but a faculty of the soul, a spiritual instrument. You can dive deep into feeling without drowning. You naturally draw people who honor reciprocity, who meet you with equal presence. Your empathy sharpens into discernment. You can sense the difference between what is real and what is performed, between authenticity and disguise. You offer healing presence, not by absorbing others' wounds, but by standing firmly in your own essence. But the path to sovereignty demands what I call the courage to disappoint. You must be willing to let down the energy leeches who feel entitled to your light. You must be willing to unsettle family members who have depended on you as their emotional caretaker. You must be willing to defy the cultural script that tells empaths their role is to endlessly carry the pain of others. And here is Jung's unflinching warning. Once you begin protecting your essence, there is no return to unconscious empathy. Once you recognize the feeding patterns, you cannot unknow them. Once you taste sovereignty of energy, you can never again submit to emotional servitude. This awakening comes with cost. Some relationships will fracture. Your very identity will be shaken. You will confront parts of yourself that long to be needed more than respected, that prefer being useful over being authentic, that choose depletion over solitude. And some will fall into the wrong lesson. They will use this awakening to justify walls instead of boundaries. They will harden into cynicism instead of clarity. They will mistake emotional numbness for spiritual mastery. This is not the goal. The true aim is not to stop feeling nor to cease caring. The aim is to feel with wisdom, to care with intention, no longer out of compulsion, but from conscious choice. Jung left us with this truth. The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. But to become your truest self, you must release the masks you wore for the comfort of others. Your light is not a commodity. It is not a resource for others to consume. It is the essence of who you are, sacred, sovereign, and whole. Your empathy is not a transaction, not a service to be endlessly dispensed. It is a presence to be embodied, a gift to be shared consciously. The world does not need more exhausted healers collapsing under invisible burdens. It needs awakened empaths who know the difference between love and enabling, between compassion and codependency, between sacred service and self-erasure. If the moment you stopped serving as an emotional landfill, people began treating you differently, write in the comments. They sensed my awakening before I ever spoke it. Remember Jung's chilling observation. Empaths are often fed upon, and the feeders were not demons, but ordinary people, unconscious, surviving by devouring borrowed light instead of tending their own flame. In his final notes, Jung confessed, "The greatest and most important problems of life are fundamentally insoluble. They cannot be solved, only outgrown. You cannot solve the problem of energy parasites by fixing or healing them. You can only transcend your compulsion to be indispensable to them. And here lies the liberation. When you guard your light, you do not shrink it, you magnify it. When you stop letting others feed on you, your energy returns home to nurture your growth, to mend your wounds, to fuel your evolution. The empath who learns to protect their essence does not lose compassion. They refine it. They learn to offer light only where it is honored, reciprocated, and mirrored, not consumed." Jung's ultimate warning was not just about predators. It was about reclaiming your birthright, to choose consciously how your gift is used. Your sensitivity is not a curse to survive. It is a superpower to master. Your empathy is not weakness to conceal. It is strength to wield with wisdom. Your light is not fuel for others' shadows. It is illumination for your own path toward wholeness. Parasites can only feed on those who remain unconscious. But when you awaken, when you become sovereign over your own field, you become untouchable. This is the highest protection, not walls that exile the world, but awareness that admits only love. Master this, and you will never again confuse depletion with devotion, being drained with being loved, being needed with being valued. Jung's warning was stark. They are feeding on your light. But his promise was luminous. You hold the power to end it. If this message resonates, know this: you are not alone. Thousands of empaths are awakening, reclaiming their power, breaking ancestral cycles of unconscious giving. Tell me in the comments, what is one boundary you're ready to set to protect your light? Your story may become the spark for another empath's liberation. And if you are ready to journey deeper into Jung's psychology and its application to modern relationships, watch my video, Why You Have No Motivation Left After Facing Your Shadow. There, I explore what happens to drive and ambition when the shadow begins its integration. Thank you for walking this path with me. Until next time, I'll meet you in the next dimension.